Hello and welcome to Reviews. As always, I'm Plume Noir. Now, before I start talking about the second episode of She-Hulk Attorney at Law, let me say that I'm not going to do as much of a recap of the episode like I did last week, but instead I'll discuss my thoughts and observations. The main reason is I had to re-edit and re-upload my review of the first episode several times just to stay within fair use, because the video kept getting hit with constant copyright infringement claims automatically by the algorithm. But if you want me to do bigger recaps, I will. Just let me know in the comments and I'll do so in the future. Now that said, there will be some minor spoilers for episode 2. In this episode, we see the fallout from the literal courtroom battle from the first episode. Because Jen saved the jurors from Titania's attack, she has tainted the jury pool, which resulted in a mistrial. Oh, and Titania is a social media influencer because, why not? Plus, it's also not explained why exactly she entered the courthouse and busted through the wall at that particular time during the trial. Yeah, I'm a little bit worried that the show is going to delve into the LOL so random and trite coincidences for its humor, and worse, for its plot. Now, because of that fight, Jen gets fired from her law firm for losing the trial. Now, I am not a lawyer, and I know this is not meant to be an accurate legal procedural show, but even I know that a mistrial does not mean that either side wins or loses a case. The case would just end up being retried with a new jury. And this really bothered me and caused me to pause and say, bullshit. Since Jen's firing depends upon this one key point, I had a really hard time getting past this. A much easier explanation would have been that her law firm finds Jen to be a liability since, as a superhero, their office would constantly be targeted by villains in the future, which would endanger the safety of all the employees. This would also help to explain the following scene where Jen has trouble finding a new job because all the other law firms don't want to risk having supervillains attack. But no, it was just the fact that she lost the case is what got her fired. And because of this, she nearly considers that maybe she should have let the jury get hurt or killed in order to save her job. Now, she may not have wanted to be a hero, but she should have been beaming with pride that she did the right thing. That is what comic Jen would have done. And I'm now convinced that we are not going to see comic Jen in this show. One thing I want to point out before going on, I know this guy was shown as a sexist in the first episode, but they really try to push it with this line.
There's a hot chick over there. I'm going to go talk to it.
Where he refers to a woman in the bar as an it. I know they're trying to portray him as a sleazy lawyer, but he comes off cartoony one-dimensional, as opposed to a more fleshed-out character like Dan Fielding from the old TV show Night Court. Okay. One more thing I wanted to point out. I called it last week. The press named Jen She-Hulk, and she hates the name.
Like a chick Hulk. A She-Hulk? Exactly.
I know, it's pretty obvious, it was a setup, but I called it last week. So Jen gets a new job with GLK&H, the law firm that won the case due to the mistrial. Now, overall, I think this is cool, because it's pulled from the comics, and we even see Holloway and Pug, but I wish Pug looked more like his comic book version. But Jen has reservations about the job because GLK&H is starting a Superhuman Law division, and they want her to head it up, but they want her as She-Hulk. Now, it seems weird that Jen would feel this way. We see that she's already well accepted as She-Hulk, even if she's not quite comfortable in her new skin. And she's also very uniquely qualified for the role as both a public superhero, if for only 5 minutes, and a lawyer. If anything, I would have loved to see Jen make a pro-gamer move by telling Holloway that he'd have to increase his salary offer if he wants her. It would have been a very, what do they call that now? A very girl boss move to have pivoted the advantage back toward herself. And the real-world social media would have loved it. And most of all, that would have been what a real-life career advisor would suggest. But now we have the downside of that job. Her first case is to defend Emil Blonsky, aka the Abomination, from the Incredible Hulk movie, who is still played by Tim Roth. You know, I can't think of anything I've seen Roth in where he wasn't awesome, and that continues to be the case here. Plus, Emil's comparison between himself and the Hulk and how he is considered the villain while Hulk is the hero, well, he's not wrong. In fact, he comes off better and more sympathetic than Wanda did in the second Doctor Strange movie. Of course, it is weird that she would have to defend the guy that attacked her cousin Bruce, but even Bruce vouches for Emil.
That fight was so many years ago, I'm a completely different person now. Literally.
This little wink to the audience here is pretty much the only funny line in the episode. But then Bruce leaves to save his home planet or something and will probably be out for the rest of the season if he doesn't die on the way back home. As you can probably tell, I have a few problems with this episode. I thought I would like it more than the first one. As much as I don't like origin stories like the first episode, I knew that that's what that episode had to be. You know, every normie knows the origin of Batman, Superman, and Spider-Man, and I know that is not the case with She-Hulk. In fact, I remember reading comments when the first trailer dropped where people thought that she was a brand new character. Now, with the origin story over, I thought this episode would kick things up, but it really didn't. Well, not at least, halfway to 2/3 of the way through the episode. See, this episode felt like the pilot, while the first episode, kind of a prologue. Each episode is about 30 minutes long, so I don't get why they didn't just edit these 2 episodes down to like one 40-minute episode and just make it just like one longer opening first episode and have it an 8-episode season instead of 9-episode season. And because they're on a streaming service, they're not constrained to the time limits of broadcast television. The biggest sin that should have been cleared up by the end of the second episode. What exactly is Jen's personality anyway? Most of what we know are from the platitudes that her cousin Bruce and her best friend Nikki say to her. This series is really suffering from not adhering to the show don't tell concept. I mean, we know she's a great lawyer and an awesome person because that's what everyone says, but we don't really see much of that. For example, Jen gets fired from the job where she has been busting her ass. We get a quick montage of her being turned down for other jobs, and then she has to deal with the humility of being fired while she's at a family dinner. There's very little reaction from Jen to show how devastating this is. She's barely reacting at all. Where is the constantly has to control her anger line from the last episode? Seeing her get even a little pissed off would have justified that scene from the first episode at least a little bit. I'm starting to think that Tatiana Maslany is wasted on this show. She's a far better actress than this, and they're only using okay smile and okay frown, directions for her acting range. Jen spends most of her time just reacting or sometimes complaining. They should have gone less Ally McBeal and more Mary Tyler Moore. I've never seen anyone with so little control of their life act like they have everything under control the way that Jen does. That would actually have been a cool setup if we saw a little chinks in her armor, that the stress of maintaining everything was getting to her, and that losing her job would have been the final bit, maybe snapping at her family. But no, none of that. And I doubt we're going to see anything that would show Jen in any state of weakness in this show. It seems like there are no stakes in this show. Remember how I just said she barely reacted to getting fired and not being able to find a new job? Well, you should. I just said it, 47 seconds ago? But I suppose that's why she didn't react. She had the job of a lifetime hunt her down and find her in the bar, and then the job just plopped into her lap. That's why I said I was worried that the show might just be LOL so random and coincidences. If truth be told, I'm not sure that the show has made up its mind what it wants to be. See, I can see where it tries to be funny, like the mid-credits scene where she gets repeatedly taken advantage of. No, not like that. But most of the humor in the show falls flat. But I will say the last 10 minutes or so of the show is actually good. So what score would I give this episode? Now, on my clock scale, thumbs up, thumbs down clock scale, I'd give it about a 2 o'clock. Barely a thumbs up. So the pacing is really bad, and as I mentioned, it only starts to pick up as the episode gets closer to the end. Now, it's not as heavy-handed with the women great, men bad as the first episode, but there are still subtle signs of the themes from the first episode carried over into the second episode. I really want the show to be good, but the cautious optimism I had going into the first episode is fading quickly. Well, that about wraps it up for now, so I just want to say thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again next time.
That sucks.